One of my favorite spots to draft from this year in 10-team Superflex is the 103. You're guaranteed one of the top 3 quarterbacks, Jamar Chase, or likely your top running back. On top of that, there's usually some insane value that falls to you at the second pick if there's a big run at quarterback. First 2 picks, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. No big surprise there. Can kind of go in either order. I do have a tier of the top 3 quarterbacks. However, Lamar and Allen are kind of in their own little mini tier. You can make the case for Lamar Jackson, obviously coming off an incredible season, was the QB1, passed for over 4,000 yards, 41 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, and did what he typically does on the ground. I do have Allen as my number 1 just because we've seen it so consistently. He's finished either QB1 or QB2 every year since 2020. Obviously had a great season in his own right. So for this pick here, to me personally, because it is 10-team league, I'm more inclined to take Jamar Chase than I am Jaden Daniels, but you can make the case for either of those guys, and you could really make a case for Bijan here as well. But given that it is 10-team league, we are going to see fewer quarterbacks in total, only 20 starters each and every week. All right, so next picks, Christian McCaffrey, Jaden Daniels, Bijan, and then a huge run at the quarterback position. So it'll be interesting to see who's still available here at the QB position for me. So looking at this, we've got Herbert, Purdy, Goff, Fields, Dak. I'm not super inclined to push up any of those guys with this pick, so I might be looking at other positions here. At the running back position, Devon Achane, and at the wide receiver position, CeeDee Lamb is still available. I mentioned this before, but this is kind of one of the reasons that the 3 spot is turning into one of my favorite picks in 10-team Superflex. And if you say, hey, my league doesn't necessarily push up quarterbacks this high, look at the other players, still available. There's still Puka, Neighbors, Amon-Ra, Nico, BTJ. So I'm going to lock in CeeDee here, who is my number 3 wide receiver this year. Next 4 picks, Puka, Justin Herbert, Amon-Ra, and Malik Neighbors. There's quite a few skill position players that I really like here. I mean, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr., can make a case for Devon Achane, maybe even Brock Bowers. Just not sure I can pass on Brian Thomas Jr. here. I have him as my number 6 wide receiver, and to get 3 wide receivers in your top 6 is just an incredible start. And I think for me, the other choice would be Nico, who I love and I think is in for a great season. I do have him wide receiver 7. And again, looking at the quarterback position, there's just so many guys here that I think you could bucket into a similar tier. Let's just take another peek and make sure. But yeah, Goff, Purdy, Fields, Dak. I love Drake Maye. So there's a bunch of guys here that I still really like. And same goes with the running back position. As much of a monster that I think Achane can be, there's just so many other guys in this range that I can kind of build around as well. So I'm just going to take what the board gives me and select BTJ. All right, so we see 4 quarterbacks go off the board, which shows me that each of these teams have 2 quarterbacks currently outside of team 6, and then outside of team 2. And of course, I still have none. But looking at the QBs available now, maybe it's time to take one of those. Let's take a look at the cheat sheet. So now we see Drake Maye, Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, JJ McCarthy. Okay, so I think after Maye and Love, I still like Stroud and Lawrence, but not as much as those 2 guys. So I think what I'm going to do, would this make sense? I'm worried that team 2 might take Drake Maye. I actually have Drake Maye quite a bit higher than consensus. I have Maye as my QB9 right now as it stands, which I think is like 5 spots ahead of ECR. So that would just be irresponsible not to take him. He's definitely one of my plant my flag players this year. And if he ended up going to team 2, I would be very disappointed. And looking at the other wide receivers, like, yes, I like T. Higgins, but I can still get Garrett Wilson, maybe Rashee Rice, Tyreek. There's still a bunch of guys there. Maybe I want to go running back. Trey McBride is another interesting option. Let's go with Maye here. Okay, so Rashee Rice off the board, Jordan Love's off the board, Bucky Irving, and Breece Hall. So my fear of Team 2 taking a quarterback ended up coming to fruition, but now the fact that Trey McBride is available here, I think it's just too good to pass up. I think with McBride, especially in full PPR, it's like, I hope that Marv takes a step up, and I think he will, but McBride just owns the middle of the field, and Kyler just loves targeting him. So I think just to have that positional advantage is just too good to pass up. And again, I'm taking a little bit of a risk at the quarterback position, but you see all these other teams have two for the most part. So given how deep the position is, I think it would be silly to pass up McBride. So we see a pretty big run at the wide receiver position. We also see George Kittle go off the board. I think come August, we're going to see Kittle climb a little bit closer to McBride and Bowers. Like sometimes you're seeing like a 2-round ADP gap, and I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that. So, happy I locked in McBride here because Kittle was someone that I, would have taken with this pick had I passed on him most likely. Now, looking at the running back position, because I don't have one yet, we've got Alvin Kamara, Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard, Joe Mixon, James Conner. So those are all guys that I really like. And I think it's just too tough to pass up on Kamara in full PPR. I mean, whoever is going to be manning quarterback all year long they're just going to check it down to him. I think this offense is going to be very concentrated between he, Olave, and hopefully Shaheed comes back healthy, but we've just seen it year over year, and especially in PPR, it's just a cheat code. So next 4 picks, TJ Hawkinson, Zay Flowers, Joe Mixon, and Xavier Worthy. I think for Hawk, we know he's a really good player on what should be a really good offense, but this feels a little bit too early for him. I will say a piece of advice is don't necessarily panic at tight end and feel like you have to take him there, but something I wouldn't necessarily do. Now, looking back at the board, I should probably take a second quarterback. Now, I know that the computer doesn't always draft appropriately how your league would. So I know on Fantasy Pros and Sleeper as well, like they refuse to take a third quarterback. So just keep in mind, your league mates will likely be locking in a third quarterback at some point. So in an effort to keep this as realistic as possible, I'm going to lock in my second. And, I can make the case for any of these guys here, but I think with Stroud, we're a year removed from pushing him up in consensus ranking to like QB5, QB6. He dealt with a ton of injuries at the wide receiver position. We know they lost Dell and they lost Diggs, but the 2 rookies from Iowa State, I think are really fine players. And obviously they have Nico Collins, who's just an absolute stud. He gets a new offensive coordinator, so maybe that gives him some life in this offense. So I will lock in CJ Stroud here. So let's take a look at the cheat sheet again. We're good at the quarterback position. Wide receiver, let's take a look at these. Running back as well. Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, RJ Harvey, Tony Pollard, TreVeyon Henderson. And then over here, Jerry Jeudy, Travis Hunter. I think Hunter is an intriguing option. I think that's going to be one of my favorite players to follow all season long, not just from a fantasy perspective, but to like see the shift between offense and defense. And, we assume that he's going to be playing on the offensive side of the ball a lot more, but it's going to be very fun to watch. And anyone who's followed Colorado over the last couple of years has really, enjoyed watching him play because his ball skills and movement skills are just truly one of a kind. So for me, looking in this range, I know they have Jones, Swift, Harvey, and Pollard as the top ranked guys, but for me, I actually have TreVeyon a few spots higher than RJ Harvey. I know that's not necessarily consensus. I think TreVeyon's a better player all around, but the fact that I already took Drake Maye in this draft, I'm not like against stacking or trying to like get all the points in the offense. I think that's maybe a little bit of a different argument if you're a team that has like Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson and like you're going to be getting all the points on an elite offense. However, as much as I think the Patriots are going to be a much improved team, we don't necessarily know for sure. So I don't want to put all my eggs in that basket. So for that reason, I'm going to lock in RJ Harvey. I think the landing spot was very good. Clearly, Sean Payton wants to use him. They have a great offensive line, and their running game last year was just atrocious. I think with the addition of J.K. Dobbins, we'll see how that shakes out. I know a lot of people are a little bit scared about that. I would say maybe in terms of volume, but they drafted Harvey for a reason. So I think he's going to get very involved in the passing game as well. And being that this is full PPR, I think he's a fantastic pick because we know Bo Nix likes to check it down a ton. I was not expecting TreVeyon to fall here. I do have 3 studs at the wide receiver position. This is 3 wide receiver format. So my next player would be my flex player. So, as much as I think DeAndre Swift will have a consistent, late teens to early 20s type of finish of a season, that doesn't necessarily excite me too much. So I think this is going to be between Henderson and Caleb Johnson. Oh, man, but in PPR, Henderson's going to catch more passes, I think. Um, I don't think that Caleb Johnson can't catch passes. I just think that Henderson is an elite pass catcher, and I think I'm gonna double dip. I know I just went on a long rant about not wanting to be too invested in the Patriots, but this is just too good of a value to pass up for me. All right, so now I have my starting roster filled out. And I can go in a couple different directions here. I typically want to leave like this type of draft, a 13-round draft with 4 running backs. And I know for a fact that it's going to thin out very quickly. And I think with the trio of wide receivers, I might just kind of wait at the depth and try to get some sleepers at the end, because there is a player here that is just calling my name, and his name is Quinshon Judkins. Maybe I'm a little bit biased because I took him in the first round of one of my dynasty rookie drafts, but he got the draft capital. He can handle a big workload. He can catch a bunch of passes. He and TreVeyon actually caught a similar number of passes last year, sharing the workload at Ohio State. I know they drafted Dylan Sampson in the 4th round, who I actually like quite a bit, who should get some runway in that role. But I just think Judkins is just an incredible talent. And I'm the type of person that leans into rookies year over year, and typically that pays dividends. Now, I will say, given the makeup of my team, I've already got vet in Alvin Kamara, and this would give myself 3 rookies. But between those 3 guys, like, someone is going to emerge as a top 15 running back. So let's go with Judkins here, and then maybe spend the rest of the draft filling out the wide receiver spots. Pretty big run at running back here. So Najee, Tony Pollard, Tyrone Tracy went. So that's definitely why I wanted to lock in Judkins. Now let's go back to the cheat sheet here, see who is at our wide receivers. Jauan, Jennings, Josh Downs, Deebo Samuel, Cooper Kupp, Jaden Reed. That makes this pick pretty easy. It's Jauan Jennings. We've seen the spike weeks. We know Deebo's gone. Ayuk is probably going to start on the pup, and he can score in bunches, like I said. So I think there's a real chance that he's heavily involved, at least in the beginning of the season. And what that allows me to do is maybe stick him into my flex spot as these young running backs kind of get their feet beneath them. So there's still a bunch of wide receivers here that I think could be pretty good picks. I'm kind of out on Deebo, and I'm a little hesitant about Kupp just with health concerns, but it is hard to pass up on Cooper Kupp for someone like Darnell Mooney, who I definitely like as a sleeper. But I don't know, now that Seattle's moved on from DK and Lockett and brought in Kupp, obviously they have JSN. So if Darnold can have another really good season, I mean, we saw what he did last year, and if Kupp can stay healthy and turn back the clock a little bit, I think that's worth taking a little bit of a flyer on. So typically I would go with Shaheed here. I don't think I'm going to do that just because I already have Kamara, and we don't expect the Saints to be all that good. I'm definitely interested in ending up with one Saints player, because we see every year that offenses that don't project well actually outperform, and their ADPs end up being a steal. Christian Kirk doesn't really interest me. I'm going to go with Mooney here, actually. We saw he had some nice flashes last year. We know Penix is going to be the full-time starter. He likes to air it out. Defense shouldn't be great. And other than, obviously this is running through London and Bijan, but, he's really going to be seeing a lot of volume, I think. And so I think he's a really good late round flyer. Apparently I have to log in to get a draft grade, but let's just assume that it was pretty decent. So quick review, I've got Stroud and Maye at the quarterback position, Kamara, Harvey as my starting running backs, as well as Chase, CeeDee, BTJ, and Trey McBride. I think that's just going to be an elite group of guys and very tough to beat in full PPR. And then with my bench, I've got Quinshon Judkins, Jauan Jennings, Cooper Kupp, Darnell Mooney, all have definitely high ceilings for where they're being drafted. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.